It's a delight to be with you. I commend you all for being here today. I am a fairly recent arrival to the state of Utah. I came from Chicago, as Rory indicated, and I'm delighted to find a high-profile conference called the Utah Coalition Against Pornography. It's a great resource, and as our speaker and the keynote speaker this morning indicated, every state has one, although I confess I'm not aware of the availability, and that's something I need to remedy, the availability of these kinds of resources and organizations in other states. But I'm glad to be here today, and I'm grateful for Rory Reed and for his introduction. My clients that I've worked with as a psychologist with pornography addiction specifically are very well acquainted with Rory's articles and writings, because I routinely assign them to read things that he's written, and so I'm really grateful for the work he's done, as are many of my clients. Today I'm going to talk about using resources and practical tools in the community to assist change efforts. And as I do so, I guess the key word is practical. I want to make this very practical. You have a handout coming out to you that will summarize some of the main bullet points and things that I will discuss. And I guess I would give you two numbers to remember. If you walk out of here today with these two numbers well understood, I will have been very successful. The 5 stages of change and 10 principles of change. That's it. If you can walk out with that, I'm very grateful. I think that I will have provided you with something practical to use, to refer to, and to consider in regards to helping with this issue of pornography. And not only in the issue of treatment, my bias as a professional, as a psychologist, is to treat individuals who have problems, to reach them at the intervention stage. However, the theme of this conference, as you all note, is on prevention as well. And so I think that these stages of change and these processes of change are also very applicable to helping us change our behavior in relation to prevention of pornography issues. So I think that we can cover the whole gamut. You'll also note on the handout that my bias is on individuals and loved ones. So we're looking at the family. I think that was also consistent with our keynote speaker this morning, indicating that it really comes down to the home, it really comes down to the parents to really make an effective change in the issue and the pernicious effects of pornography. The last note I'll make as I begin the presentation is that this is a very complementary presentation. A lot of times when you get a lot of therapists together, you get very divergent ideas and sometimes contradictory ideas, and so I want to assure you that this is a very complementary model, that no matter what, if you're interested in treatment, or if you're interested in seeking treatment or referring somebody to treatment, this is something that is going to be relevant no matter what. And so I offer that as well. So let's go ahead and begin. A lot of the issues of concern when we have a pornography issue is where do we go for help? And of course, I've already indicated that this could include individuals who struggle with pornography problems. Although I will make the case today that usually it's not the person, initially the person who's struggling is not ready to roll, ready to change. And so the second bullet point is, in many cases, it's the concerned significant others. And then also, of course, all those wanting to prevent pornography problems in general. Common sources of help without being too redundant, of course, therapists and psychiatrists. That's my bias, that's my training, but we don't stop there. There are also very other sources of help that can be of use. Clergy, church leaders, support groups, and things can play a very important role. I'll show you how that kind of fits into the model. Also, as a quick note, I was on a conference call yesterday. I'll be talking about what's called the stages of change, and the stages of change was originated by a gentleman by the name of James Prochaska. Not a name you necessarily have to remember, but he's one of the top 5 most cited psychologists currently, and he on this conference call, he was on this conference call yesterday, and I had a chance to listen to what's going on in his world. He's currently managing $60 million worth of grants on behavior change. I don't believe, and I don't think that pornography issues are one of the things, more public health and medical health types of concerns. And what he said, one of the keynote elements that he spoke about was that really these huge behavior change in the area of healthcare anyway is going to be more in the realm of coaches, not formal coaches like people who hang out their shingle as a coach, but individuals who I'm just trying to coach and change behavior. I have no professional training, I have no professional role, but I'm trying to make behavior changes occur. And so that's where really the real leverage is going to occur in widespread behavior changes. And I would propose that in the issue of pornography, I think a coaching framework as a parent, as a friend, as a church member, or whatever, really is going to play a big, big role. Other sources of help include information, and I'll describe our role for information as well, include issue-focused organizations like UCAP, websites, and then books and other things like that. So where do I start? I would like to propose that we start today considering the change issue related to either starting prevention behaviors or stopping the issue of pornography by understanding what science says about human change, and then also to recognize where you or your loved ones are in the process of change regarding the abstinence-related behaviors for people who are affected, or prevention-related behaviors for people who do not want to become affected by the problem of pornography, and also to apply proven principles of change. The proven principles of change will guide the timing and the type of resources to access. As Rory indicated in a conversation with me just before, that the large majority of individuals who have pornography struggles, when they're in treatment anyway, are not quite ready to start changing, and yet they're there. So that's a little bit of a dilemma that has to be resolved. So let me start with the stages of change. Very practical framework developed by James Prochaska, and there are some important assumptions. And these assumptions actually represent some changes in our field. The first one is change is a process, not an event. We like to think that there are epiphanies. We like to think that there are quantum change events where just miraculously I do change. That can happen. They do happen. Certainly they do. But by and large, for most people, most of the time, it's a process, not an event. And then also, successful change follows a predictable process. And we'll get into what the specific stages are just in a moment. Also, another assumption is that people are not always ready for change, but there's always something to do at each stage of change that will help an individual progress. And that's an important feature here. The old paradigm is that we as therapists, for many, many decades, would simply categorize somebody who was not ready for change as resistant, as reluctant, and we'd say, well, come back to me when you're ready to change. And that's a real unfortunate thing. The same thing was done in research studies where only those people who are motivated, ready to roll with the change effort in therapy or what have you, were involved in the study. So we have this huge gap of people who are not quite ready, but probably able to benefit from change, but not included in either therapy or in research. The last bullet point is an acknowledgement, a realistic acknowledgement, that relapse is common, but the good news is that most people don't quit altogether. In some of Prochaska's research, he's shown that about 85% of people who try to change really hard addictive behaviors, smoking, drinking, and I would throw in pornography problems as well, 85% of people relapse, or if you want to use the word relapse, they lapse into a different stage. However, only 15% call it good, they call it quit, and they don't continue to change. The vast majority of people who have a slip-up, if you want to call it that, after making a commitment and an effort to try to change, are still engaged somewhat in the process. So here we have the 5 stages of change. One of the key take-home messages. If you remember nothing else, remember this. This also works very nicely for New Year's resolutions and other kinds of things. There are 5 natural stages that people go through. Prochaska was kind of confused by all the different theories of therapy and psychology and problems, and he had a hard time reconciling it. So what he did was he actually followed 1,000 people who were trying to quit smoking. And he watched very, very carefully and studied very rigorously what they did and how they changed. And many of these people changed without formal professional interventions. And he said, there's something to this. And he has since expanded this model that this is good for support groups. People who succeed in support groups go through these 5 stages of change. People who change on their own go through the 5 stages. And, wouldn't you know it, people who go to therapy also go through the 5 stages of change. And as a quick note, unless I forget, there's one thought is, when should a person go to therapy? Well, it's like, when I'm ready to change. That's a key note. I think if you are looking to refer someone to a therapist, if you are looking for a therapist yourself, or if you're wanting to screen effective resources, find people who know what to do at each stage of change. Because if you say, on behalf of someone else, for example, well, he really needs help, but he's not really motivated right now. A therapist who's trained in the approach that Rory Reed talked about in motivational interviewing or the stages of change will say, okay, I know what to do. I know where to start. I can start with that kind of person. The message is we can work with you, which is very encouraging. So here are the stages of change. The first one is called pre-contemplation. Pre-contemplation. These are listed very small type up and down the left-hand and right-hand sides of your little handout, just as if you want a quick note. And also, if you are very interested, you can read more. Google Prochaska, Google Stages of Change. There's a reference to a self-help book that I like very much on the upper right-hand corner in very, very small type. I apologize. It's probably hard to read in the dim light, but that's called Changing for Good by Prochaska and collaborators. Pre-contemplation is essentially a person who says, no way, I'm not going to change. I'm not even considering changing. And the next stage is called contemplation. Let me back up. For pre-contemplation, usually the person has no intention to change, whereas in contemplation, the person says, maybe I should. In other words, I recognize there might be some pros and cons or some merits to it, but I'm not ready in the near future. Preparation. This is a stage where the person gets to the point where it says, yes, I acknowledge there's an issue, and really, it's time to start. I'm going to start to make a change, although they're not fully or actively engaged in the process. Action is, I just started. And this is kind of a hard work stage where a person is trying to break free and move from old habits to new ones. And it requires a lot of effort. And then lastly, the maintenance stage. I'm just going to continue what I'm doing. People who reach the maintenance stage of change tend to not have to work as hard. It's more of kind of built in. It's internalized into my values. It's internalized into my lifestyle. I've built a life of meaning around this newfound change. A very concrete example is fitness and exercise. But in the issue of pornography, it's someone who has, if you want to take someone who has been negatively affected, they've created a life where they have established a pornography-free environment. And in their environment, it's everywhere they go, in their homes, in their workplaces, but it's also internal stuff, meaning that that's part of who they are now. So let's talk about, I will in a moment talk about some examples of how this stages of change model applies to a pornography problem, but let's kind of back up or maybe even flip the model on its ear a little bit and talk about how a person who goes from a non-pornography user to a pornography user, which is also, incidentally, they follow the stages of change. You have somebody who's unaffected and uninvolved with pornography. And then you also have somebody who, and later, there may get small levels of exposure. Or I attended Dr. Jill Manning's talk just a few moments ago, talking about how we are desensitized by values, by the disparities we see. And there's a little bit more permissiveness. A person then may develop, if they proceed in the stages of change, develop highly tolerant values toward pornography. In the active action stage, this person begins to actively seek it out. And then in the maintenance stage, the person is entrenched in a regular pattern of use and a problematic pattern of use. One last thing, another helpful thing that Rory has done is created the Hypersexuality Behavior Inventory, HBI. And there's three things three themes that tended to emerge in that. One is problems with control. I can't control this thing anymore. Consequences, this is causing bad stuff in my life. And then also coping. That's a really crucial piece, that pornography has somehow become a way of coping with stress, a way of coping with lack of fulfillment, a way of coping with problems in my life where I just need a distraction. And so those are characteristics of an entrenched pattern. So here's a solution. So someone who, we take that bottom left-hand issue and take it up and put it up on the top, this is where we start. I have an entrenched or regular pattern of use of pornography. I begin to think about changing in the contemplation stage. I prepare to change by deciding it is time to change. I need to really make a change. And then action, I actively change. And then ideally in a maintenance stage, the person achieves a long-term abstinence. I wish it was that easy just by clicking the steps. It's really not quite that easy. But one of the things that hopefully you are saying in your mind right now is that seems pretty simplistic. That seems pretty linear and kind of step by step. And what happens is people tend to go back and forth all the time, as I've already indicated. These presentations go pretty quick, and I am open to, if you want to throw in a comment or something, feel free to do so. I'd be happy to air those as well. And I'll be sure to repeat the question so all can hear it. Let's go through the handout. This is the practical kind of, please, go ahead.
Is it best to talk to the people about these changes?
Excellent question. The question is it best to talk to people about these stages and to inform them about this? And the answer is yes, absolutely. In fact, the stages of change and motivational interviewing are very refreshing approaches to behavior change because they put the client or the individual who's seeking assistance in a place of respect. And it's a full acknowledgement that in spite of all of my training, all of my magnificent systems, wonderfully written workbooks, you have to own change. And it's not in a kind of confrontive kind of guilt trip orientation, but saying, this is only going to work if you want it. And so yes, absolutely, it's very, very important to educate people about the stages of change. Yes? Yes?
Would that be appropriate in a clergy setting, or what would you suggest that?
Okay, so the question was coaches, and would coaches be appropriate in a clergy setting? I do think so, yes. I think that what we realize is that I work for LDS Family Services, and I'm the Research and Evaluation Specialist. I've been there for about almost 3 months now. One of the things that we're realizing in LDS Family Services is that there aren't enough therapists to go around. More people need to be able to help than just therapists. And as I'll point out also as well, the change process is much longer than a course of therapy, even if you choose to do therapy. So the question is absolutely yes. The answer is absolutely yes. Bishops, church leaders can play a very, very important role, clergy role, in the coaching process for helping people change. As to whether that replaces therapy, accompanies therapy, or support groups, that's up to the choice of the individual. Did that answer your question in the back?
How about a step further, if
Okay.
a bishop's just overwhelmed with individuals who are having problems, would it be appropriate if the individual agrees to have a coach assigned to assist the bishop and the individual?
The question is, would it be appropriate if there's a clergy member or a bishop individual who's just overwhelmed and cannot provide that individual coaching, would it be appropriate to assign them to an individual to kind of provide some coaching? I think that could be a helpful prospect. In fact, my boss, our commissioner, Larry Crenshaw, has looked at that a little bit, and we're looking at that possibility of it being a useful modality. But by and large, it's much better than nothing, and I think it would be helpful. Now, let me back up and say that in many cases, though, it's important to involve a professional if there's like severe psychological, psychiatric issues going on, or if the efforts to change have not worked. But by all means, yes, I think it can be very, very effective and very, very helpful to have a coach or a mentor. Okay, so let's read over the little handout here. I've titled it 10 Principles of Protection in the Battle Against Pornography. And the first 5 are what we do in the early stages of change. So you have somebody who's not yet ready to go. And these are the things that you do, that you try to do for yourself, that you try to do for another person that you're helping and coaching. You try to make sure these are ready to go, and that ideally will help them move toward getting ready for change. And they're called insight principles. Prochaska calls them experiential processes. There's a big debate about whether do we change from the inside out or from the outside in. I'm not sure that this model answers that, but definitely it recognizes that to force someone to change or to institute action when they're not in an action stage is problematic. It's going to derail the change process. So there is an idea of doing the right thing at the right time. And so the first one is awareness. These include feedback from like a test. I'll show you in a moment. My parent employer, I work for LDS Family Services, which is the counseling arm for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has approved our development and deployment of a website called combatingpornography.org. Combatingpornography.org, and I'll show you some screenshots of that in a moment. It's not yet deployed. Well, there's a placeholder for it. It's kind of a very limited website now, but the one that will be deployed shortly should be a very helpful resource, and I'll show you some examples of that. But on that, there's a feedback, little questionnaire that kind of prompts some questions. Education, much of what this conference is providing. Discrepancy. One of the things that we do, a very important thing to do for somebody who's not ready for change, is to help them develop discrepancy. Somehow, I'm here, and I want to be here, and it doesn't feel good. And we actually want to encourage that feeling. We're not bad people as therapists, but we want to encourage that discrepancy, that feeling of, I don't like this. Linking symptoms to problems, reading and media campaigns can all be part of what I call awareness, but Prochaska calls consciousness raising. And in fact, one of the key things one of the key interventions is helping individuals list the pros and the cons. Now, I work with a strongly religious group of individuals and families and marriages in my work, and it's oftentimes kind of a question that takes them aback quite a bit by saying, what are the benefits of pornography use? What do you get out of it that keeps it going over and over? And sometimes people ask, well, why are you asking about benefits? I thought you were against pornography. But we need to understand what the pros are so that we can understand what's driving that behavior. Plus, it also sets the stage that you can talk about this here. And that would be another kind of a key principle later on. We'll talk about helping relationships, that we need to be frank either way, both the pros and the cons. The next one is, well, let me just kind of review the items here. I won't read them all, maybe not. Let's see, we're doing really good on time, actually, so why don't I? Awareness. These are just items I made up. This is not a validated questionnaire, but just more of a thinking tool to think about it. The awareness questions on the prevention side, on the left-hand side, are, my loved ones and I are very aware of the dangers and harmful aspects of pornography. Very basic statement, right? But as has been pointed out, many people are not aware. And so that awareness can be a very first important thing. If you follow over on the right-hand side of the questionnaire, these are intervention questions that a person might ask themselves or that a therapist might guide them with, or a coach. What are the pros and cons of pornography use? And and ideally, you can talk about it in a way that begins to develop a discrepancy. I'm beginning to see that this is not what I want to do. Number 2 is conviction. Conviction, and this would involve emotionally moving experiences. So we've got the head covered in the awareness page part, and then we have conviction, the heart. Emotionally moving experiences, role-playing, grieving, personal testimonies, and media campaigns. Prochaska calls that dramatic relief. My boss told a story of a gentleman, a high-profile gentleman that lost a tremendous amount of weight, and was a high-profile individual in the media. And this individual said that he went from pre-contemplation to preparation in the matter of a few seconds. And the incident was, there was an individual who, an umpire who he respected a lot and was very well known in baseball, and was standing out in the field, clutched his heart and staggered just a bit, and then fell down, and he died of a heart attack right there on the spot. And so this gentleman was saying that I was in pre-contemplation before he touched his heart and started to stagger and fell down. And he didn't use the stages of change terminology, but then he said, I was a believer when he fell down on the ground. So in a few milliseconds, I was ready to go. I knew that I needed to take better care of my health. That's an example of an emotionally moving experience, and it's important to have those. And one of the problems with pornography use specifically is that people get numbed out, and so sometimes it's hard to kind of trigger those emotionally moving experiences. Okay, the next one is understanding of impact. Essentially, that is understanding. I'll read the item. Let me back up and do the conviction ones here. My loved ones and I have a strong conviction about the danger of pornography. And then on the therapy side, we might say, what concerns me regarding pornography use? The understanding of impact would be, my loved ones and I understand that pornography hurts the innocent. Now, I'm responsible for this questionnaire, and I put that out. That's a value statement, and I do believe that's the case, that pornography does hurt the innocent, and I think it is documentable. I think scientific supports that statement as well. Scientific research supports that statement. On the other side is, how does pornography use affect others around me? Trying to raise awareness that is not a good thing for us. Excuse me. The contention, one of the times the rationalization we oftentimes get in these contemplation stages is, it's not hurting anybody. I'm alone. I'm on the internet, and I'm just doing my thing, and I'm not hurting anybody. But I think then that's a way where it says empathy training, documentaries, and family communication. It might also go back to literacy, media literacy campaigns, which we have several presenters here at this conference today who are doing media literacy campaigns to understand that, my dollars, my support, my clicks, my hits on pornography sites are not making the world a better place. I'm not supporting a charitable organization. Dr. Victor Klein is a gentleman who's in Salt Lake City who did many, many years of treatment of pornography problems, sexual addictions. And he had an intervention, which he abandoned later on, incidentally, but the intervention was to have the person pay. And I've noticed other therapists have had people, a consequence, my money will go to a negative, an institution or an entity that I don't support, I don't like, as a consequence to try to change the behavior. And effectively, that's what we're doing when we are accessing pornography. We're supporting an industry that's very value inconsistent for most individuals who would attend this conference today, for example. The understanding of impact on the other side is how does pornography use affect others around me, and trying to raise awareness on that. Next one is what I call social strength. The item on your questionnaire says, my loved ones and I support and affiliate with groups and individuals who uphold decency and shun pornography. And on the therapy side, we would ask, what are sources of social strength around me that would support abstinence from pornography? So the idea is that I'm not alone. We're in this together. There's a movement that I can tap into, whether it be a church, whether it be this organization, UCAP, or whether it be something else. Somehow I'm tapping into something, like-minded individuals, or at least I'm noticing that what they're doing is helping, is making the world easier to change. And that's a very important piece, because I think it can be such a private concern, a private problem that is encapsulated by shame, but it is so important to link up those concerns with those of like-minded individuals. So social strength. Okay, and then we'll go to the next one. So this is the fifth one, last one of the insight, kind of the preparation type things. Personal standards. My loved ones and I understand that pornography damages a person's self-worth, either because I become disconnected from my values, because I become indifferent to those I care about. And then on the therapy side is, in what way is my self-worth affected by pornography use? This can be done through value clarification, healthy role models, and imagery. There was a conservative Christian group that I came across on the internet, and they were using the personal standards intervention was, would you feel comfortable if your wife or daughter participated in a pornographic, in a film or picture? And the vast majority said no way. And yet that's an interesting value kind of contradiction, kind of a jarring question, one you may or may not choose to use, but that's a jarring question that can really kind of put things back into perspective. So you have the insight, the insight principles, awareness, conviction, understanding of impact, social strength, and personal standards. And a lot of times you kind of have to bounce back and forth and work those a lot in trying to help somebody. And they will let you know in most cases that it's time to change. And the really neat thing is once you help someone through the pre-contemplation, contemplation, get them to the point of preparation, a lot of times, it's hard work to go to the next one, the action stage, but a lot of times you have to just get out of their way. Whereas if we skip over the first three stages, we end up kind of pushing them along, and then we scratch our head later on to figure out why are they not motivated? Why have they bailed out of treatment, or why have they quit trying to change, or why are they avoiding me? And a lot of times it's because we've not gone in the correct order. Any questions so far? I talk fast and I have a lot of content, and people sometimes say you put way too much on handouts, and I don't know what they're talking about. Let's go to the next ones. So we're now to the action type principles, what Prochaska calls behavioral principles. The first one is environmental control. The item on your questionnaire says, my loved ones and I safeguard against portals, devices, and activities where pornography can be accidentally or easily viewed. So a comment on that one is that one of the I think several speakers have said already today that I've heard, and I definitely encounter that in my practice and my work with individuals, is that the cell phone issue is kind of a new conundrum. There are some really pretty good tracking software packages for the internet and filtering and blocking software. I don't know that we have really good solutions yet for cell phones, and that's a big deal. And so you simply need to ask yourself, are cell phones prevalent? Yes. I mean, I'm sure probably the majority of people here in this room have a cell phone, and so that's a very widespread and a kind of a perplexing environment. But nevertheless, In the action stage, we're heavy duty on, we're going to control those environments. People oftentimes ask me, well, does it really work? Should you really worry about software and blocking and filtering, all that stuff like that? Absolutely, you should do that. You can't stop there, but you definitely should have that on board. General examples include avoidance, re-engineering our environments, and social support. I'm starting to associate with other individuals who are supportive of my change. On the therapy side, we might ask, what are my triggers and how I can control each one? So a very logical thing would also be to remove reminders, remove routines, kind of shake things up so that you're not in the same mode. Because what you'll find from a person, what you'll find with a person who has a pornography issue is that they fall into patterns very quickly, and they don't acknowledge a lot of conscious control over the situation. So you're trying to help them with this. The next one is helping relationships. The item on your questionnaire says, my loved ones and I support each other to resist the influence of pornography. On the therapy side, we might say, who can I specifically go to support when I need it? I'm asking that in therapy because I'm not that person. I can provide good therapy sessions. I can provide maybe on call if I'm a very, very ambitious therapist. I might have contacts during the week on the phone if I want, if I'm ambitious. I may not be able to because of family or professional demands. And so it really does come back to the natural helpers that exist for that person and having a helping relationship. It's got to be there. This is one of those you can't skip over. It's got to be there somehow. And this might go back to what the gentleman in the back said a moment ago about the coaching piece, that maybe that would be the coach, maybe that would be the clergy member, maybe that would be somebody who could assist. There was a hand in the back. Okay, so the question was talking about practical tools in the community, and the specific question was, could law enforcement and attorneys general help to establish safeguards to repel the tide of pornography, correct? Okay, so the example was some counties in this country are so-called dry counties. I don't know. That's well out of my domain in terms of law enforcement and legislation and legal controls. I think that could be the case. Our keynote speaker this morning spoke about that, that there already are laws that make pornography, peddling or promoting pornography to minors illegal, yet the disparity is that it's not being followed up on. There are virtually no lawsuits, there are virtually no prosecutions, except for the exception would be the child pornography piece, which is heavily prosecuted and sought after. So I think, hypothetically, yes, absolutely. I don't know that our current systems are trending toward that way. And so I think that's why an organization and a conference like UCAP is so important, because we're trying to work on it from a different angle. But excellent comment. And I think that if there is support legislatively, if there is support legally, if there is support from a law enforcement perspective, that can help with what we talked about earlier about social strength. Hey, there's people on my side. There are safeguards. There are people that are willing to help me out or help to make this world a place where it's easier to resist the influence of pornography. Rapport and trust building is important. Counselor calls and buddy systems are examples of helping relationships. Personal controls. My loved ones and I understand that everyone needs to have controls in place to protect against pornography. Again, I am the author of this, and that's a value statement that I take responsibility for. But I do think everyone needs to have a consciousness and can benefit from some controls. There's no one anymore that's not incidentally exposed to pornography, and so we need to be alert to that. So I think an excellent prevention step is to say an acknowledgement that we all need we can all benefit from controls, whether we're affected or quote unquote addicted to pornography or not. On the therapy side is how can I counter and resist emotional and physical psychological urges to use pornography? Examples of these include relaxation to counter stress. I indicated before that a key characteristic of a problematic pornography problem, or any addiction for that matter, is that the substance, whether it be alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever, becomes a way of coping with life. That's a real key thing. When you're doing your own kind of investigations, asking about youth or other individuals who are affected, if you get the sense that the person is beginning to cope with life through the substance, that's problematic. Even if they don't have major consequences related to it, that becomes a problematic piece. So personal controls. Oh, see, yeah, go ahead. The question was, how do you bring that to a person's awareness that the idea that pornography now becomes my coping tool with stress, why that is problematic? I think there's several ways. One is to we do like a functional analysis. So what are your triggers? And say my trigger is I'm alone at night and I had a real stressful day. Okay. And the behavior is, well, I access pornography in those situations. That's a high risk situation for me. And so I would drill down a little bit more. What do you mean you had a hard day or a stressful day? Like, well, I had a lot of problems at work and that kind of thing. I had something emotionally distressing during the day. And then you talk about that, and then do the behavior, and then on the back end, the consequences are, well, I feel some relief from the engaging in pornography, usually some sort of sexual acting out, sexual compulsive behavior like masturbation. And then that's a short-term consequence. It's out of my mind. I'm not worried about it. The long-term consequence is I hate myself. I hate this. I feel like garbage, and that's sometimes the things people say. And then so what you say is, okay, let's look at this. You're getting the short-term benefit that lasts maybe a couple of seconds, and usually my clients say it's fleeting, seconds, minutes maybe, during the behavior and shortly after. And then I'm in the pits afterwards. So we need to draw, instead of a dotted line, a dark line from that behavior to the long-term consequences. Here's another quick couple examples that a coach might ask. It's called looking forward or looking backward. Looking forward. Okay, looking forward in 5 years, say you don't change this behavior. Where do you see yourself? Do you like what you see? And in most cases, no. They say, no, I wouldn't like that. Or reverse, looking backward. Looking backward, when this was not a problem, what was going on in your life? What was life like back then? And that can be very potent and very powerful. And I think it underscores and helps them understand that, yeah, I don't like the way that I'm coping with life. And so kind of trying to draw lines and make connections is kind of the short answer. And the other key piece is, as you notice, these are all questions. I want them to make the argument. I want them to verbalize it. It shouldn't come from me. I can provide some information if they're willing, if they're ready. I might ask them for permission. Can I share something with you, what I know about the negative effects of pornography use? But usually it's got to come from them. That's the whole spirit of stages of change and motivational interviewing. Excellent question. Okay, gratitude and rewards. Basically, charting your progress. This is important to the support groups. Some of the traditional Alcoholics Anonymous use coins. LDS Family Services kind of supervises an addiction recovery program, which is modeled on the 12 steps. And there's an idea of coming together and saying, I'm doing okay, I'm doing better, or I struggled and I'm still trying. Somehow rewarding, recognizing success. So gratitude and awareness is the item on your questionnaire. My loved ones and I count the ways in which we are blessed by abstaining from pornography. And on the other side, what routines or systems can I set up to measure and encourage my progress? That's a very important piece in the action stage. That helps people get through the day-by-day kinds of struggles. If it's not there, it makes change difficult. The last one is commitment, including resolutions, public testimonies, and multiple rather than single choices. I'll get back to that in just a moment. But on the commitment piece on your questionnaire, it says, my loved ones and I recommit on a regular basis to keep pornography out of our lives. It's a repeated commitment we're going to make. We're going to make our home and our mission statement for our home is safe, it's secure, it's protected, it's a haven, it's a sanctuary, whatever. There's a kind of a symbol there, and we regularly renew that commitment. On the other hand is how can I regularly, meaningfully recommit to stay with changing? The last point under commitment is the issue of multiple rather than single choices. That can be very, very helpful for someone who may have some struggles. And let me offer something that James Prochaska said yesterday during that conference call I was on, that there are 50 documented reasons why exercise is very beneficial to your health. Excuse me. And each one of those can become a new reason to work on fitness or losing weight, for example. For instance, you could say, this week, I'm exercising for my bones. This week, I'm exercising for my heart, and go on and on. This week, I'm exercising for prevention of type 2 diabetes or whatever. That's so important for commitments because it amplifies. You take many of the reasons. You will gather reasons today why pornography problems are harmful and why removing pornography from one's life is beneficial. And each one is a gem. Each one has its own special power, and that can be very helpful when I recommit. This week, I'm going to abstain from pornography because my children deserve it. This week, I'm going to abstain from pornography because I want to strengthen my relationship with God. And He deserves it, and I deserve a better relationship with Him. That kind of a thing. Linking with personal values. That's helpful for commitment. Okay, so that's it on the stages and process of change. It's a very simple, very elegant kind of a framework, and very, very helpful for all of us to understand, whether it be for New Year's resolutions or for this thorny and heavy issue of pornography problems. It's helpful for us as if we're affected by it. It's helpful for us if we want to coach and help individuals make some changes. Let me just give you a couple glimpses of the website that will be deployed later this year, hopefully not too far along, but this is the combatingpornography.org. It's obviously sponsored by LDS Family Services and approved of, and has the stamp of seal at the bottom from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So obviously, first and foremost, it's going to be of interest to Latter-day Saints, Mormons, but there's attention to try to design it in a way that's applicable to anyone. Anyone could benefit from it. The front page, the byline won't necessarily be filling my life with light, but it'll be replacing darkness with light, or one of those themes. That's the theme of it. Kind of a welcoming, friendly-looking environment. And there are different. You'll see on the top. There's pages for individuals, spouses, parents, youth, and leaders. They'll be updated regularly with content. Content on the left-hand side, such as preventing, recognizing, overcoming, and finding support, and a lot of articles. You'll see a lot of big names here. The second article there, Michael D. Gardner. Michael is my colleague at LDS Family Services. He's actually running the site. He's been a speaker at UCAP. He's actually in Hawaii today, otherwise he probably would have been here. But he's also an author of some articles that are on the page. There's an emphasis on prevention and recognition, like I said before, and a quick little glimpse of a simple little questionnaire. It's not structured, but just a way to try to raise awareness. Do I have a pornography issue? You'll see on the middle of the page, do you spend, do you view pornography in order to escape, deny, or numb your feelings? Back to the coping issue. So that's a picture of the website. Let me just kind of scroll back up here so you can see it again. And that is my presentation. I hope you've gained something practical out of it, that you'll have a better idea of how people change, and when and how to introduce other types of resources in the community, such as support groups, websites, counselors, and therapists if needed.